Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's Vin PF, and on today's episode we've got something that is going to be incredibly special to me, but may not be so special across the board, but yeah, each to their own on this one I think. Now this one here, you might see differently from the title that you clicked on. This is the Glenglassaugh Torfa, or is it? So this box was given to me by Food Queeg, hence all hail the Queeg. Now, if you don't know who Food Queeg is, and you really should, then go and check out his channel. I'll put a link up here. He's another whiskey reviewer, but really the guy is just so genuine, and he just basically has a flight and records his thoughts and has a big old chat with you, the viewer. Really genuine character. But Queeg, who's from Canada, he came over to the UK fairly recently, and I was lucky enough to spend a couple of hours with him fairly close to my hometown, over in Birmingham, and he bought me a bottle across from Canada. Now when he handed me this, he said, "Here's the bottle I've bought you," and I saw the Glenglassaugh Torfa. I thought, actually that's pretty good, I'm enjoying that. Turns out it was the J.P. Wiser's Legacy. Now the reason why, obviously he needed a box to bring it over in, but this is actually a box from his wall of whiskey. If you watch his video, if you watch his channel, he's got a wall of whiskey behind him, all the boxes he's basically ever bought. I'm not sure if he does any doubles, but you know, at least one of everything he's ever bought. And this is one of them, and I have a massive regret that I didn't get him to sign this, because I'll keep this box forever. Let's put that away and talk about the actual whiskey. Now, he brought me this over by hand in his baggage on the plane from Canada. This is a Canadian whiskey, J.P. Wiser's Legacy. Now, I had never really heard of J.P. Wiser's much before. I'd heard the name, but in the UK we don't really get this sort of thing. We get a few bog standard Canadian whiskies. If you try harder, you can get hold of a few more Canadian whiskies, but nothing major. Basically the stuff that I've covered already. I'm going to put a link to my Canadian whiskey playlist up somewhere up here during the course of the video. So stuff like this is really hard for me to come by. Now, I understand from Queeg that it's a fairly cheap whiskey to buy, but unfortunately it's discontinued. That is a bad thing for everybody, I think, especially the Canadians. You guys tend to keep your amazing whiskies to yourself. You don't tend to export much stuff, apart from the really bog standard things like your Crown Royal blend. I can get that in the supermarket, but as per the video that I've done on that, didn't really like it that much. It's all right, but in the UK we pay like £30 for that, rather than, I think it's like the equivalent of like 18 or something in Canada. Anyway, we're going off on a right tangent now. Let's talk about J.P. Wiser's a little bit, because it's unlikely I'll ever cover anything by them again. Now, I'm going to take this glass out so I can have a little sniff while I'm talking about it. But J.P. Wiser's is Canada's oldest continuously produced whiskey brand, which is pretty damn amazing, I think. It was founded in 1857 and is now owned by, ultimately, further up the chain, by Pernod Ricard. Now, it goes through a few hands to get up to that sort of level, but you know, that's the kind of global stage that we're talking about. And that's something that really annoys me, because Pernod Ricard sell a lot of brands in the UK, but they don't send us any of this. Send us more of this, please. Send us more of this. Now, onto this whiskey itself. It's considered a Canadian rye whiskey. I'm not going to go too much into the rules on rye whiskey, but in Canada, there's this weird rule where you can put rye on any whiskey, even if it doesn't even have any rye in it. Bit strange, but you can go on Wikipedia if you're really interested to find out about kind of why that happens. They've got a kind of 9.09% rule as well, which is kind of confusing, but also simple. Hard to explain, but simple, I think, is the way I would describe that. That's maybe for another video. Maybe I'll do a dedicated video on those. But this one does have a rye mash bill. Don't know the exact contents of it, but what I can tell you is that most of the whiskey in this is aged 10 years and above, and something like roughly 33% of it is lot 40. Interesting stuff, interesting stuff. Let's get onto the whiskey itself. I think I've whittled a little bit, about my usual sort of length, but I felt like it deserved a little bit of explanation, mainly because I don't think I'll ever cover something like this again. Let's get onto the nose. Now, it's a 45%er, did forget to say. I haven't going to go into price on this because it's unobtainable by me and by a lot of people, but why not? So Value is going to be a bit of a funny one, but we'll talk about that later. Nose. It's very, very oaky. Lots of vanillas. Some spices in there, some apple. It does smell like a rye, but that might just be me being led by the rye name. Let's go on to the palate. For me, that's my first indication of the actual full ryeness of it. I find rye quite hot, quite abrasive almost. And that's another reason why I've left it so long to do this review since I've received this bottle, because I knew I was going to be trying a lot of rye this year. I've got a specific playlist for ryes. I'll bang that up there as well. So I wanted to make sure that this was going to be something that I would understand, let's say, before I did my review. So on the palate, that's where the real rye spice is coming through. Yeah, more of that apple coming through. It's really quite tasty. The finish, it's not overly long, kind of medium-y, and all of them flavours are kind of mixing together. But as that fades out, I'm getting a kind of aniseed vibe from it. Now, from some of the comments I read online about this dram, there's a bit of batch variance that goes along since it was released in 2010. Gathering by some of the comments that aniseed is more prevalent in later releases, I'm going to assume this was a more recent release than some of those earlier ones that got the critical acclaim. But overall, really, really, really tasty. Now, I am super glad that I've got this. I've got 2 bottle collections downstairs. I've got a cupboard that I keep all of my special stuff in, and I've got a kind of shelf where all of my kind of free to drink stuff goes. So if I fancy a dram of an evening, I go to my free to drink. If I've got people round that just want to try some stuff, they're not really into whiskey, they go to the free to drink. If I've got someone round who's really into whiskey, then we tend to tap into my better stuff in the cupboard. Now this one here is going to go in the cupboard. Not necessarily because it's a mind-blowing whiskey. It is very, very good. But it's just really special to me now because I know that once this bottle's gone, I am never going to taste this again. I mean, maybe I might be able to find somebody who would send me some, but really it's going to be more difficult than it's probably worth. Now, if you've got a bottle of this, then congratulations to you. I think it's well worth drinking and well worth saving. If you are saving it, please do pop it at some point because it's one of those whiskies that really highlights what Canadian whiskey can do. You know, some of the basic ones really don't give Canadian whiskey a good standing in the global stage, but stuff like this really does. So I implore you to open it, implore you to drink it, share it about, and let everyone know what it's all about.